3 good reasons Americans are boycotting travel to Europe right now. We think it is a combination of 3 things why Americans are not going to Europe as much for travel or even for long-term move. And these are 3 very good reasons. Hello and welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. What's going on? Americans aren't traveling as much to Europe. In the summer of 2024, Americans were traveling and moving to Spain in droves. So what has changed? U.S. travelers turn away from Europe, reaching lowest interest levels since 2021 due to cost and domestic travel trends. Oh yeah? Now the reasons given are all very nice and dandy, but they don't compute when you consider the bigger picture. We must consider everything. The reason they are giving in this report why Americans aren't traveling to Europe right now is because of cost. Cost and domestic travel preferences drive decline in European travel interest. The primary factor influencing Americans' reduced interest in European vacations is cost. However, we have a bone to pick with that statement. According to media sources, Americans have opted to travel in their own country in the beginning of 2025. And this trend is reported as increasing into the year. We think that's great that Americans want to explore and adventure in their own country. There is so much to do and see right here in our own backyard, and I think it's human nature to take it all for granted because, well, it's all right here and we can explore our own country at any time, right? But the reality is, traveling within the USA can be very expensive unless you have a recreational vehicle and intend on boondocking or staying with friends and family, which some people will do, but not all of them. Even if you don't boondock, the price to stay in some of these recreational parks is really over the top expensive now. And let's not forget the investment one would have to make into that RV, which is a depreciating asset. If you're taking a flight, staying in hotels, and eating out in restaurants, you're going to spend some money in the US, okay? But putting that aside for a moment, the article goes in to report that even more long-term Americans, that would be those Americans who expatriate from the US to another country, is decreasing. While many still plan to travel long haul in 2025, only 44% of global travelers are considering Europe, down from 49% in 2024. And again, cost could be a partial factor in choosing not to travel or move to Europe in 2025. But we think it is much more than that, and in our opinion, the article is not stating the real issues. We think it is a combination of 3 things why Americans are not going to Europe as much for travel or even for long-term move. And these are 3 very good reasons. There's already too much tourism and gentrification, and it's just not a welcome scene. Too much tourism in Europe is causing a clash between the local people and the tourists. And when there are protests in the streets and locals angry and resentful at tourists, they're going to stop coming, at least for right now. Many of these countries did this to themselves. And according to the report, they will definitely feel the tourism crunch when less Americans travel there and spend their money. Americans spend the most on hotels and dining out and sightseeing tours and operations in Europe than any other country. Tell us in the comments if that surprises you. It doesn't us. Americans like to go all out when they're on vacation, and that's expected. That's why it's called a vacation, right? Impact on European tourism industry and travel destinations. The decline in U.S. traveler interest is a warning sign for European hotel operators who have relied heavily on American tourists since the reopening of borders post-pandemic. U.S. travelers have historically been big spenders, contributing significantly to the revenues of luxury hotels and high-end retail sectors in popular European destinations. Another thing that is not surprising is that the most historically popular countries are feeling the impact the most. European tourism hotspots like Italy, France, and Spain, which have traditionally attracted large numbers of American visitors, are likely to feel the impact the most. Some of these countries find out the hard way how too much of a good thing actually plays out in this internet age. In times past, pre-internet countries would change their policies to increase traffic and investment as needed. In these good old days, the information might be printed somewhere in a not well-known financial hard copy magazine or a book written by a developer, promoter type. The going was usually slow and methodical. Not anymore. Those days are long gone. Once a country opens up the floodgates of internet promotion, hiring vloggers and partnering with retire abroad media, it's like dropping the A-bomb compared to firing a .22 pistol. Big difference is an understatement. Countries might want to reconsider this approach. After all, we now have the benefit of hindsight and clear evidence that it is not sustainable. Unfortunately, though, these foreign governments are sometimes more likely than not composed of people within the top industries that benefit the most. And what business person does not like a sudden influx of, or rather opening up, the floodgates to exponential revenue growth, also known as sudden riches? These foreign governments could improve their strategies by concurrently regulating some of the typical activities that result, such as restrict Airbnbs and restored old buildings converted into apartments that cater to the foreigners in the cities where the locals make their living. Restrict property buying in the cities because every single city that has not done this in Europe is now paying the price and is having a housing crisis. Good luck expecting these changes from property developers and tourism operators, though. Conflicts of interest, right? The second reason Americans are not traveling or moving to Europe as much is because of the political tensions. Tensions between Europe and the USA at the moment are high. Many Europeans from several different countries are resentful towards Americans, and that's just one thing. Some Europeans seem to have a difficult time separating an American individual citizen from whatever they feel they dislike with the U.S. administration. Emotions run deep right now in Europe. We've noticed through the comments just on our channel that many Europeans still hold stereotypical biases towards Americans as well. They're either not communicating well, don't know what's really going on in the world, or they are holding in resentments for whatever reason. The fact is, some of the people of Germany, Spain, and France seem to just not like Americans. This is not something that just came about with the recent new U.S. administration either. We find that people everywhere are just too political nowadays, and they lose sight of what's really important in life. Too much politics makes people lose sight of the important things for our lives. It's total distraction, and really the result is for everyone to be divided. Where is that coming from? Distractions work wonderfully to help people not realize that it's their politics that cause their life discomfort in the first place, and it's a common political strategy to blame opposing sides. It's a vicious cycle. Politics literally disconnects people from putting their trust and faith and life in their creator. Instead, they're putting their faith and trust and life in the hands of a man or administration, and it's all so political. And the third reason is quality of life in Europe is not necessarily better than the USA. That is a personal perception. It's just a different culture and life that offers stimulation and excitement at first, but all of that wears off and most Americans come back home. Here are just a couple of things that Americans are finding out on their own when they move to Europe as an expat, but then come back home 1 to 5 years later. Salaries are much lower than in the USA. Many EU countries have very high taxes and they tax your worldwide income. English is rarely spoken. In the cities, they do speak more English. It's very basic, and you will only be able to communicate superficially with people, which is the reason why you feel isolated. Yes, one of the top things Americans say is they feel isolated from the local people. That's a communication gap. Eventually, the excitement of living in a new country will subside, and that's when things start to change in your overall lifestyle and quality of life. You'll see. Europe, usually living in the tourist hotspots, will not be that much cheaper for you, or even cheaper at all. Europe is becoming more and more expensive, especially in the areas everybody wants to go. Many things are way more expensive in Europe, such as electronics, cars, household items, just all of it. Europeans are not that warm to Americans, and you'll never really fit in because they won't allow you to fit in. You will be considered an outsider. So it appears that Americans boycotting Europe is for these 3 good reasons. Well, that's it for this information. Thanks for watching. Take care and bye-bye.